our Alzheimer's of Central Alabama's webinar, Alzheimer's Disease Headlines, Fact or Fiction with Rita. We have been having several of these webinars and are planning to do about 3 a month, at least through February. And so I want to encourage you to visit our website, and because you can view any of the webinars as they are archived. In August, we have planned Daphne Johnson, who is, she started the first respite program at Montgomery First Presbyterian Church, First Methodist Church, excuse me. And now she has started a foundation called Respite for All. And Daphne's got a new book coming out, Reclaiming Joy Together, Building a Volunteer Community of Real Hope for Those with Dementia. She is dynamite. I hope everybody will make an effort to join us for that August 20th at 11 o'clock. But we're in for a real treat today with Dr. Rita Jablonski. She is a professor at UAB and a nurse practitioner in the Memory Disorders Clinic. She also, and this is an interesting facet some people may not be aware of, she has her own consulting business where she helps people with questions about providing dementia care. And that company is called Dementia Centric Solutions. So I know whenever I have a support group or am with caregivers, they are all quoting Rita Jablonski. They are telling me the things that Rita has taught them. And so her powerful message is really getting out there. So Rita, thank you so much for being with us today and presenting this information.
You are so welcome, Miller, and welcome everybody. So this is one of my favorite presentations because I have fun with it. And it started because I had people asking me questions all the time about seeing things on the news, all these cool, compelling, curious headlines. And a lot of these headlines are a little bit, they play a little bit with the truth. So there was an article that came out about a year ago about how periodontal disease causes Alzheimer's. And a lot of people ran with this. Well, there is a backstory. When you look at the research, the one study used multiple samples to weave this story. They used brain tissue from people with and without Alzheimer's disease. They used body fluids from living people with possible Alzheimer's disease. They weaved in gum tissue samples from volunteers and even had tissue samples from mice, because in mice, if you cause an oral infection, the mice don't go through the maze that well. So if a mouse doesn't run through the maze at a certain time period or is taking a lot of wrong turns, they will say, oh, its cognitive function is impaired. And then they sacrifice the mice and they look at their brains and they say, hey, look at this plaque. It's Alzheimer's disease like. It's not exactly what we get in people. And so what they did is they injected substances that blocked what was called gingipanes and rescued the neurons in mice. But a mouse brain is very, very simple compared to a human brain. That's why you will find a study where it says, we did A, B, and C, and look, we fixed something in a mouse brain. Awesome, that's great. But then when you start moving up the animal hierarchy into rabbits, cats, monkeys, etc., you may not see the same translation. So what are the scientific links between Alzheimer's disease and gum disease? Well, the theory is inflammation. Swollen gums cause an inflammatory response in a body. Tau is a protein that the brain produces when, or is thought to produce when there's an inflammatory response. So one of the things we talk about all the time in research is two things happening at the same time do not equal causation. Correlation is two things showing up at the same time. Ice cream consumption is correlated with hospital rates of accidents. Does that mean eating ice cream causes trauma? No. When it's hot and people are outside, they eat ice cream and probably do silly things that results in them getting hurt. One of the running jokes in my family is the one sentence that precedes a 911 call is, "Hey everybody, watch this." You know it's not going to end well. So in research, people may take huge databases and statistically look at things that clump together. So the question is, why would gum disease and Alzheimer's disease coexist? There are a lot of good reasons. People with Alzheimer's may refuse to perform mouth care, or they may refuse you doing mouth care. So the plaque builds up and causes gum disease. Or another possibility is people with diabetes are at higher risk for gum disease and cardiovascular disease. And cardiovascular disease is a risk for vascular dementia. And people who develop vascular dementia may also see an unmasking if they had underlying Alzheimer's disease happening at the same time. So the big takeaway is correlation does not equal causation. And that's something that when reporters are describing studies published in research journals, they may not understand it, and they may link things together and draw questionable conclusions. So cardiovascular disease and dementia, this is an MRI of a brain, and these, let me get my little pen here. Let me get my laser pointer. These white areas are, sorry, I did not silence my phone. That's embarrassing. Okay, anyway, these white areas are damage from strokes. Maybe the person knew they had a stroke, maybe they didn't. But essentially in cardiovascular disease, you have areas that clotted off, and so the neurons that were fed by those arteries died off. And when you see all this white matter, that's usually indicative of a vascular dementia going on. Okay. So the next thing I had wanted to talk about was this book called The End of Alzheimer's. And Dale Bredesen is an NIH-funded researcher. But notice the book says prevent and reverse cognitive decline. It does not say prevent and reverse Alzheimer's. And so here's the story. Cognitive decline is not Alzheimer's disease, so the title's a little misleading. Cognition involves attention, concentration, executive abilities like planning, implementing an activity, judgment, and retrieval of memories. So a couple seconds ago, my phone rang and I was distracted. So my attention and concentration went offline a little bit and I had to regroup. All of us may have fluctuations in any of these activities depending on what is going on. Prior to us starting this Zoom seminar, we were talking about Zoom fatigue. And it's because your attention and concentration is really focused in these Zoom meetings, unless you turned off your camera and you're, sorting laundry while you're listening to the Zoom meeting. Don't tell anybody, but I've done that for some of our faculty meetings. So I want to jump to what's called cognitive reserve and the role it plays. Cognitive reserve, there's my neuron. And what happens with cognitive reserve is you do activities over time that can increase the number of neurons, and as we age, we don't make neurons as quickly. So what you can do, the picture I just showed up shows a network of neurons. They're all connected, so they're sending signals. So the analogy I use is, once I have trees, it takes me a while to grow a tree. But if I fertilize the tree, I can increase the root network and I can increase the number of branches. So with cognitive reserve, if I do things that keep challenging my brain, learning new things, learning a language, a musical instrument, Sudoku puzzles, I increase the number of linkages of branches between the existing neurons. And you may say, well, that's nice, so what? The more connections you have, the more pathways you have to retrieve memories and to use attention, concentration, and all those components that I talked about on the last slide. So that's what cognitive reserve is. People who build up a lot of cognitive reserve may have impairment, but it may be harder to see. So the analogy I use is, if I'm driving in downtown Birmingham, there are many, many streets that run parallel to each other, and it's a grid. So if I'm on University Boulevard and there's traffic and the traffic has stopped, I can turn right and take 10th Avenue, or I can turn left and take 6th. So I have ways to detour and to bypass stuck traffic. And the more cognitive reserve you have, if you do damage a section of your brain, you have backup pathways that just take the traffic and off you go. So possible protective factors to prevent Alzheimer's or to delay it showing up are higher levels of education, physical activity, antioxidants found in food. Estrogen, I have a little asterisk because in some studies it was shown as a possible protective factor, but then it was also linked in some groups with increased cancer, and in some studies it showed no impact. So I think that may have to do with study design, so that's why I have the little asterisk. But anti-inflammatory drug use, people who have years and years of taking anti-inflammatory medicines seem to have a reduced risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Alcohol is listed, but there is more controversy because the American Cancer Society recently came out with recommendations, and they have identified correlations between the more alcohol you drink, the more likely you are to develop cancer. But there's also what's called an interaction effect between exercise and alcohol. Some studies are demonstrating that people who are very physically active, we're talking a good maybe hour a day, they're running, they're walking miles and miles, they're very physical, they're in occupations that are very physically demanding. The exercise is exerting a protective impact, a protective effect on alcohol consumption. So every time I bring up these articles and I use them in some of my research classes, unfortunately my nursing students all go, oh, so I can drink like a fish as long as I exercise. No, that is not the message. It's just that exercise really has a lot of protective effects. So that's where I'm going with that. Cholesterol lowering drugs. are possible protective factors because it reduces your risk for cardiovascular disease and for the cholesterol damaging the blood vessels in the brain. The Mediterranean diet is wonderful because of its reliance on fruits and vegetables, lean meats, and obtaining fat from plant sources, not so much from animal sources. So we know there are things that mess up our ability to think, to concentrate, to focus, to retrieve memories. And these are also considered reversible contributors. So if someone presents to memory disorders and they say, my memory is terrible, one of the things we do is we go through these different components to figure out if there's something going on that we can fix. Insufficient quality and quantity of sleep causes the brain fuzzies. If you've ever had a bad night, you know the next day, it's brutal. I have colleagues who are doing research looking at shift work and nurses, and sleep deprivation can impair at the same level of legal intoxication, depending on how sleep deprived one is. So sleep deprivation is a thing. It does impair the ability to think. Vitamin deficiencies, especially your B vitamins, can cause problems with cognition. Hypothyroidism, if my thyroid levels are low, I get very sluggish and my thinking slows down. If my oxygen levels are poor because of lung disease or anemia, that affects my thinking. If my blood sugar drops, that makes me confused. If I am anxious, I have trouble again with the concentration and the focus. Same with depression. If I'm really depressed, I have problems with thinking. And homocysteine levels. Homocysteine, I'll talk about that in a second. Homocysteine is an amino acid found in your blood plasma, and you need your B vitamins, folic acid, B6, and B12 to break down homocysteine. High levels of homocysteine are thought to scar the inside of the blood vessels and cause clots and blockages, which that's a contributor for vascular dementia if this happens in the brain. So there are emerging studies that are examining how homocysteine and possible other proteins may be hurting the neurons in the brain. So if you notice, a lot of these factors are interwoven. There's no one magic bullet. So let's go back to the book and go back to what Dr. Bredesen suggests. Dr. Bredesen supports the MEND program, Metabolic Enhancement for Neurodegeneration. The thing is, he has multiple publications, but it's all the same data. And so what this program involves is diets that are low in grains, low in sugar, so they are thought to be low in inflammation, and they incorporate foods with low glycemic indexes, which means when the food is broken down, it doesn't cause spikes in your blood sugar. The MEND program advocates fasting 12 hours each night. So you stop eating 3 hours before bedtime and you go the full 12 hours before your next meal. Honestly, not eating before bedtime makes sense because eating food too close to bedtime can mess up sleep. And for those of us who've packed on the COVID-10, the COVID-15, or the COVID-20, eating and not moving is a bad combination. The program recommends stress reduction like yoga, meditation, adequate sleep, physical activity, controlling your blood sugar, addressing your hormone imbalances like keeping an eye on thyroid levels. And it does advocate supplements like B vitamins and fish oil, which if you're eating a good healthy Mediterranean diet, you should be getting those things anyway, if you're eating your salmon and your mackerel and your fatty fish. So what does all of this have in common with what our moms told us to do anyway, and fuzzy thinking risk factors? So if you look at everything Dr. B recommends, and neurologists have been recommending these for years, the diet does all of the things on the left-hand column contribute to fuzzy thinking risk factors. So yes, would I recommend this approach? Sure, if it makes you feel better, and it's all healthy, good stuff anyway. So, sorry about the quality of the slide, but anyway, if you look at one of his publications, Reversal of Cognitive Decline in Alzheimer's Disease, I want to point out a couple of things that are red flags for any research you may read. He used 10 subjects. That doesn't tell me anything. That's basically almost a case study. Those with mild cognitive impairment did better on neuropsychological testing. So 6 of the people who were diagnosed with MCI followed the program and then did better on testing. Those with probable Alzheimer's, the 4, did better on screening tests. So if you look at the results, the MMSE, which is similar to the ABC, people who were scoring 23 went up to 29 and 30. But did that translate to meaningful changes in their lives? If I mess up the concentration question, starting at 100, count backwards from 7. If my concentration and attention is impaired, I'm going to make mistakes. That's going to lower my score. If I am eating and sleeping better and my concentration's better, my score may increase. The other thing that I have found in my practice, and so have others, is I may have someone with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, and there's also some lifestyle things that they're doing that's making their performance worse. So if I suggest, and those of you who've come and seen me may have heard me say this, I will suggest physical activity, adequate sleep, get your CPAP machine fixed, eat plenty of brightly colored fruits and vegetables, salmon and other fatty fish for the omega-3s. And I will have people say, oh, we got better. I addressed a layer on top of the Alzheimer's disease. And as for maximizing function and quality of life, absolutely. So I have no argument with these approaches, but I think it's put out there as if I have Alzheimer's disease and I do all these things, I'm going to stop the disease process. No, you're not, but you're going to remove layers on top. And the other thing, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, the MoCA, the numbers went from 19 to 21. There's no difference clinically. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, this was statistically significant. That statistically significant can be a trap. If you have enough numbers of people and you compare scores at time 1 with scores at time 2, even if you did nothing, it is possible that you may see statistical differences between time 1 and time 2 with enough numbers of people. And that's because the calculations we use to measure the likelihood that these change in scores did not happen by chance, those formulas are affected by larger numbers. If I have a sample of 3 million people, I may have a 2-point difference in scores come up as statistically significant. Let's think about weight loss. I want to lose 10 pounds. So I pick up this supplement at the store and it says the study showed that people who took this had statistically significant more weight loss. Read the fine print because there is an actual product that does this. When you look at the people who took the supplement with the people who took the placebo, there was an average difference between both groups of 3 pounds. Big whoops. Yeah, I mean, I want to lose weight, but 3 pounds, that is not a clinical big whoop difference. But statistically, they fed in the numbers and they got the magical P less than 0.05. It's statistically significant. So people do play with these numbers. The next thing I want to talk about are the supplements, like the jellyfish medicine that everybody talks about. So last year, the FDA went after 17 companies for products that they illegally claimed treated Alzheimer's disease. One I'm going to pick on is Prevagen because that seems to be one of the most aggressively marketed. If you're taking it and you feel better, okay. But if you're not taking it, I wouldn't waste the money, and here's why. If you go on the website, they talk about all these studies. Well, this is what I think of their studies. APOAEQUORIN is the name of the protein. It is derived from jellyfish, but once you eat it, it degrades into amino acids, so it doesn't really do anything. And the Madison memory study that they cite involved 218 adults who showed up between 40 and 90 years of age, and they said to the researchers, yes, I have memory problems. Well, depending on my day, the day I'm having, I may feel like I'm having memory problems, especially if I didn't sleep well, if I had an extra glass of wine before bedtime, which also messed up with my sleep, or my allergies are acting up and I feel foggy. There's a lot of reasons why I may say my mind isn't functioning real well. Or if I'm stressed out because I have a sick family member or someone in my family tested positive for coronavirus, all these things are going to distract me. So you had these people show up, and the tests that they were given to assess their cognition were not standardized. They were tests that the researchers made up. So were they even measuring true cognition? Probably not. So save your money. The next question I receive is, what about the ketogenic diet, all the medium chain triglycerides? Should I eat it? Well, there's different types of ketogenic diets. There's the classical one that was tested in 1921, and it was used for children who had severe seizures, severe epilepsy, and the medicines weren't working. And this special diet decreased their seizures. So it's 90% fat, 7% protein, 8% carbs. The ketogenic diet that became popular in the 50s, the medium chain, the ratios are a little different. 70% fat, 10% protein, 20% carbs. Then you have the modified Atkins, which is 70-30 with 25% protein, 5% carbs. So there are possible benefits to those without genetic risk, for those without the APOE4 genotype. Some of the studies that are out there showed improved performance on specific cognitive tests that returned to baseline once the people stopped their diet. There are studies that are ongoing that are looking at a ketogenic Mediterranean diet, the modified Atkins, or the use of supplements containing medium chain triglycerides without having to abide by such a strict dietary protocol. But there's no free ride, people, because the ketogenic diet, while it may have some benefits, comes with potential problems. Anorexia and weight loss, dehydration. It can cause hepatitis and pancreatitis in some people. It can also drop blood sugar, hypoglycemia, which causes confusion. It can also drop sodium levels, which is dangerous and can also increase confusion. It can raise triglycerides, which increase my risk for stroke or heart disease. It can raise uric acid levels, which causes gout. It can raise cholesterol levels, which put me at risk for stroke and heart disease. It can reduce bone mineral density, so I have osteoporosis. It can promote the growth of kidney stones in some people. And it can also promote cardiomyopathy, which is increased risk of death from an irregular heartbeat. Rather, cardiomyopathy is the growth of different cardiac tissues, which then mess up the electrical conduction, and then you can have the risk of death because your heartbeat is irregular. Aducanumab is a drug that has gotten some serious press. The company Biogen is awaiting FDA approval. It would be administered as an IV infusion, and it has been shown to clear amyloid plaque. This is the study that at first it was stopped and people said, oh, it didn't show any impact. And then the researchers continued pulling all their data and doing analysis. And what they saw was there was a subset of people who responded. So it does slow down progression from mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. It doesn't stop the disease, it slows it down. Side effects include brain hemorrhages and brain swelling. So this was tested using right now they are doing phase 3B open label studies in multiple centers using participants from the Engage and Emerge studies. They started it in March and then had to stop because of the pandemic. So I haven't heard yet when these, I think they're starting to open them up, but I don't have all the facts. So the take home message, so the other thing with aducanumab, one of the things people aren't really talking about is it has the potential to increase the time when I am caring for someone with AD. So even though it slows from MCI to mild, and people are hoping it delays the need for nursing home care or other types of placement, it does have the potential to, instead of me being a caregiver for an average of 9 years, I could be a caregiver for 20. So that brings up other concerns, but at least it's something out there after we've had no new drugs approved for 20 years. So the take-home message from this talk is Alzheimer's disease and the other dementias, which I didn't even go near other than vascular, they are multifactorial. It's not one magic bullet, even though it's tempting for all of us to just embrace that one thing. If I eat blueberries for 3 meals a day, I can stave off AD. Nope, life doesn't work that way. And we don't even fully understand the interactions between the environment and our own genetic composition. Any product that offers an easy fix is suspect. The take-home message is a healthy lifestyle across multiple components is the way to go. A healthy mental outlook, downtime for relaxation, near daily physical activity. And for those of you who live near me, you might have seen me. I go out to my cul-de-sac and I do all sorts of like skips and different like cardiovascular exercises. I try to go when it's dark so nobody sees me. And the other thing I have done is I will run up and down the stairs just to increase my steps. I do have two cats who like to work out with me when I lay down on my mat and do my stretches. I do have a cat who lays next to me, and I swear Pippin imitates whatever I'm doing. I think he just wants me to pet him. So the physical activity, I know that can be a challenge with many of us working at home or stuck at home and sheltering in place. So finding ways to go out, and when it's not horribly hot and yucky out there, to move is so important, also for your mental health. Social engagement is another component of a healthy lifestyle. And again, I'll be looking forward to Daphne Johnston's talk, and maybe there's ways we can increase social engagement through things that Alzheimer's of Central Alabama is doing and other respite groups are doing, using Zoom, using Facebook, using FaceTime. And also, cognitive growth and stimulation from lifelong learning is also really important. So, and that's Blondie, and I ride her. I also ride Zydeco, and I started riding as an adult. One, I needed the physical exercise, and my idea, I mean, I hate gyms. I really do. And I tried Zumba, and it was just awful, you know. It wasn't pretty. So I do like riding, and I do a discipline called dressage, in which I have to memorize patterns and I have to engage the horse in different gaits. So it is cognitively stimulating. It is good exercise because Blondie hates to be caught, and I have to chase her around the field with a handful of oatmeal cookies, and maybe she'll come to me. But as soon as she gets the cookie and you try to throw the halter over her head, she ducks out and runs. So I usually get my 10,000 steps in before I get the little turd out of the field. But she is cute, thank goodness. So anyway, I do have my blog that incorporates a lot of what I talked about today. The blog is also on Facebook. And if you need my expertise, I have some contact information on the slide. So at this point, I think it's Q&A time, right?
Rita, I want to thank you for your comments and for really shedding some new light and giving me some new information that I can pass on to families. I'm asked frequently about Prevagen. And so I'm glad that I've got some new information to say about that. And I think we've all probably heard something hopeful in the headlines about Alzheimer's, and we want so terribly badly for it to be true that we kind of cling to that. And I can remember being at a garden club meeting with neighbors probably 25 years ago, and somebody said, "Oh, I hear that they have found a cure for Alzheimer's if you take an aspirin a day." And she, you know, when I tried to say, no, probably that's not going to be it, you know, I'm spreading bad news. I'm pouring cold water on her, you know, on her hope. And so, you know, thank you for this information. It's really, really helpful.
You bring up a really good point, because I feel like, you know, the Scrooge in memory disorders clinic, when people come bebopping in and they're all hopeful and look what I got on the internet, or look at this book. And I don't want to be that person, like the negative Nelly. However, there's a flip side. And Dr. Bradison was on Dr. Oz, and I don't watch Dr. Oz. I watched that segment because I was really curious. And I also think that perhaps there's a special hell for people who promote false information. I mean, there are aspects of Bradison's work that make good sense and promote a healthy lifestyle by all means. But to say that this will reverse Alzheimer's, About 6 months ago, my sister tagged me on Facebook because there was a guy from the UK who alleged that he fed his mom this special diet and he completely reversed. Well, maybe she had delirium. Delirium is an acute confusional state that often happens when older adults are hospitalized, have infections, have fevers. And what the thinking is the thinking is there is a pathology already going on, and the added stressors are overwhelming the neurons, so you get delirium. Once you remove the infection, the medicines, and everything else, the delirium clears. However, down the road, these people may show signs of dementia, and delirium gets better. So early in my career, I worked in a nursing home, and we would get admissions all the time from the hospital, and I would have people with a dementia diagnosis because they were over 65 and they were confused. I had people who told me, "Thank you for curing my mother." No, I didn't cure your mother. Your mother had delirium that was misdiagnosed. She came to the nursing home. I took off all the meds. We gave her a consistent schedule, and over time, she got rid of all the metabolites and she got better. Her white count went back to normal. She put on some weight and she went back to her old self. That's delirium. We did not cure dementia. So I suspect that with some lay people, that the person is misdiagnosed, and then you say, "Oh, yeah, I cured it." No, you didn't.
I failed at the beginning of our webinar to introduce Katie Cochran, who is on your screen as well. Katie is with Home Instead and helps with that provide the CEUs for our program. And I'm always grateful to have Katie's help. Katie, are you seeing any questions out there in the chat box?
I have not seen any questions. No, not yet. That was awesome, Rita. It was awesome.
Thank you.
I guess I need to talk about logistics for the CEUs real quick. You will get a survey at the end of this, and I think it's going to be sent to you. It should pop up. It's going to pop up after the meeting ends. I'm also going to put it in the chat, and you'll have the link. You can click on it. Only fill it out. You can fill it out, all of you, but only if you need CEUs is it mandatory that you do fill it out, because I need to get your license numbers and all that good stuff. And then you will receive a certificate, and the nurses I will manually enter into the Board of Nursing website. Thank you.
Well, Rita, I've got two questions. Have you seen things that, I'm trying to think of how to word this. Have y'all seen things where people have had environmental exposure, like to lead or Lyme disease, for example, and you can trace their dementia problems back to those kinds of causes?
I haven't seen that a lot in memory disorders. I have seen it in other jobs I was in. I had a 35-year-old male who was admitted for acute change in mental status, and it was an encephalitis, an inflammation of the brain. And what turned out, it was a reaction to Lyme disease. But that's one case I saw in a 35-year career. Mm-hmm. There are cases of people being exposed to toxic chemicals and pesticides that have caused problems. Now, one school of thought is we all have good and bad genes. And I shouldn't say bad. We all have genes. Some are protective some of them will protect me from developing a dementia. Others may not be so helpful. I may have all of the right genes turned on and all of the right genes turned off today, But if I start exposing myself to certain pesticides over time, or because some of those pesticides are neurotoxic, and what you may have is you may have someone who has been an avid gardener for 30 years and they bought something 30 years ago and it's still in the garage, and that stuff is no longer on the market because those chemicals were found to be neurotoxic. And I kind of lump myself into this population. I buy something, it's expensive, it's going to sit in my garage until I use it up. So maybe there's stuff in my garage right now that next week I'm going to find out was taken off the market because of its neurotoxic properties. So yes, exposure to environmental toxins can turn off some protective genes and turn on some other genes and increase one's risk for a dementia.
Rita, there's a couple other two other questions. One is eating organic important as a preventative factor? And the other is, are there any studies linking black lung to dementia?
I have not seen any studies personally linking black lung to dementia, but I could see black lung being linked to thinking problems because of the lack of oxygenation. But that would be something I would have to go look up. Just because I'm not aware of it doesn't mean that link hasn't been established. So that's a great question. What was the first one? Something about organic?
Yes, is eating organic important as a preventative factor?
There's so many definitions of organic, that's where problems happen. Because some people, okay, the bottom line is the less your food has been exposed to pesticides, antibiotics, and the more natural environment your food is planted and harvested in. And when I say natural, I'm thinking of things like your like eggs. Usually eggs have better nutrient value, and I mean, even the yolks look more yellow when they're harvested from chickens that are cruising around a pasture versus locked in a cage. So yes, I will go after food that is as clean as possible. But then you get into things like fruits and vegetables. It's up in the air, because I take a fruit or vegetable and I wash it off really well. Okay, I just removed whatever was on it. So overall, the cleaner you can eat, the healthier it is for you on a number of factors, but no one has demonstrated that a 100% organic diet is going to reduce dementia risk because of all the definitions of organic. And in some cases, the definition of organic may be, we didn't spray it with pesticides, but we still grew it in potting soil in a greenhouse.
Rita, would you comment a little bit about the status of the memory disorders clinic at the moment? Are y'all doing things, through FaceTime? Are you seeing patients in the clinic, and what kind of wait time is there right now? That sort of thing.
Okay, the majority of our return visits are being used through video conferencing, and we can go through the app AW Touchpoint. If that doesn't work, we're all really good at Zoom, and I have Zoomed with people. I also have a type of FaceTime I've done. So the majority of our visits are being done through telehealth because of the logistics. We don't want to bring people to Kirkland and increase their risk of exposure, because most of our clients, our patients, are older and have comorbid risk. Also, if I have to take my dad to the clinic and put a mask on him and he's confused and he keeps taking the mask and putting it on his head, I may prefer a telehealth visit. Some of the providers are seeing new patients face to face, but we have to balance the use of the exam rooms and social distancing so that we have enough staff to disinfect the rooms in between visits. So if someone is a new patient and there needs to be, in the judgment of the provider, there needs to be a face-to-face, that will happen. But in my case, the majority of my folks are return visits, and many are delighted with the video conferencing because they don't have to drive to Birmingham, deal with parking, and deal with all the logistics that come with coming to the clinic. So we are doing both. That's the short answer. The wait times are still a year out. So what I tell people, if you call up the clinic and you are given an appointment of August 2021, take the appointment, and then every Tuesday, Wednesday, call the 1-800 number for appointments and ask for cancellations. Because I will look at next Tuesday's docket and I don't have any openings. But what will happen is Access Center will call everybody on Thursday or Friday for the following week, and they'll say, hi, you have an appointment at Tuesday at 2 o'clock. And what happens is people may be unable to come, or the person may have unfortunately died and nobody told the clinic. So I may go from a packed clinic to 2 people between Friday and Monday. So that is a strategy I recommend, and it is a pain and you do have to be flexible, but it's one way of getting in there quickly.
And will you comment on more about what the help you give through the dementia-centric, the one-on-one care that you're giving there?
Okay. So how this business started was I had people who wanted my expertise and they weren't patients at the clinic, or they were in the clinic, but they wanted me to talk to the daughter, the son, or multiple family members so everybody was on the same page. And it was beyond what I could do in my limited time. And so I do a lot of things. I can help people with behaviors. So if someone is struggling with, I can't get my dad to accept this care, or I'm having a lot of problems with the medicine, with having him take his medicine, or there's a certain behavior that's just driving us all crazy, a lot of times I can help the people understand why is the behavior happening and what can you do to address it. And oftentimes we as caregivers are unfortunately triggering the behavior because we like to approach things with logic. We all speak in paragraphs, and I'm a professor, so I speak in like book chapters where one sentence would do. So I help people modify their approach. I also have people who will talk to me about things like, when is it time for nursing home care? What should I expect? There are some people who get a dementia diagnosis and maybe their mom or dad is in Pennsylvania with other family caregivers and nobody really understands what's going on. My work does not substitute for medical care, not at all. But I would say 90% of assistance that caregivers need isn't really medical. It's navigating the system. How do I get money for care? Well, is the person a veteran? These are your options. sometimes I simply connect people to resources because, like you, Miller, and you, Katie, we know all of the different resources right at our fingertips. So what you or I could say in 5 minutes, someone might spend 40 hours trying to figure out on the internet. I also help with organizations. Like tomorrow, I'm giving a presentation to Encompass Health, and I'm doing dementia training for all of their nursing assistants and nurses.
Well, Rita, we're honored that you shared all your expertise here with us today, because you are a wealth of information on these topics. And again, I thought you explained you know, what's how you pick from good research to maybe something that you need to bypass and talk to your physician about. Katie, do you have any thing you want to add?
Yes, there are 2 more questions in the Q&A.
Oh, excuse me. I am so sorry.
That's okay. One of them, the first one is, what suggestions do you have for encouraging someone who has been open to non-traditional methods to treat memory deficits, such as taking the over-the-counter unproven meds, to get an assessment at the clinic, such as the one you work in?
The first thing I do is I don't argue with them. If someone likes to use, and I hate to say alternative because who are we to judge? But for someone who is open to non-traditional ways, I would say, hey, in addition to what you're doing, let's also get an evaluation, because maybe there's something you can try or change in your lifestyle that may help you think better, that may help you feel better. The last thing you do is want to get into an argument about values. Well, what you're doing is stupid, so I'm going to take you to memory disorders and you're going to talk to the real experts. That's just you're going to get into a struggle that you don't want to get into. So I don't know if that helped the person who posed that question.
We will see. If she comments back and says, I need more, I'll let you know. There is another one. Debbie Frazier, hey Debbie, says, when should one be concerned about forgetting words and reason why you got up to do something with Alzheimer's disease?
Ooh,
I do that all the time.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is ask the people around you, because sometimes we are subjectively very harsh. And because of, that's a really hard question. If you think those 2 things you mentioned, the inability to come up with words, what level of words are you talking about? If I'm having trouble coming up with the word, pen, that's a problem. If I'm having trouble coming up with the word anosognosia, it may not be a word I use it may not be a word I use a whole lot, or it may be a word that we call it, low voltage. We rarely access it. Forgetting why I entered the room, what else is going on? Is my mind spinning with my own internal chatting going on? Like, I will walk around here and I'm thinking, okay, I got this article I have to have written by Friday, and I'm stressed out about it. So I'm not living in the moment. That article is whizzing in the back of my head. So I am not paying any attention to what's going on. I'm distracted. If that's what's going on, that's different. If you feel like your mind is clear and you're walking into another room to get a cup of coffee and you go halfway in and you stop, that may be something. So you have to look at all the factors that are going on. Is somebody asking you 12 questions as you're trying to go from point A to point B? That's also a factor.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rita. I think that might be the end of the questions. Miller? What you got?
Again, Rita, we want to thank you so very much for using your unique brand of humor and bluntness to teach us what we need to do. I know why the nursing students appreciate learning from you. You're a great teacher, and thank you for all this information. I hope that many of y'all will join us on future webinars. And again, Katie and Home Instead, we want to thank you for partnering with us and providing CEUs. And just one more thing I have to say, because I know we've got a lot of friends that are watching this live with us today. Our end to our 60th birthday celebration for Vance Holder will be Tuesday, the 28th, and we're going to have a drive-by birthday for Vance, and hope that y'all will come by between 6 and 6:45 here at the ACA office on Tuesday night, and we'll have surprises and treats, and we look forward to seeing y'all, and you can wish Vance a happy birthday, and maybe it'll just be a nice evening to get out of the house. So
Fun.
it will be fun. All right, until next time.
All right, everybody have a good day.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rita.
Bye-bye.